Ahoy there, my friends. Welcome to the weekly Q&A. Got a lot of really great questions to dive into today. So let's just get right into it. Our first question comes from the Cantina fan who asks, why was Princess Leia's cell number 2187 on the Death Star in A New Hope? I loved this question. Thank you so much, the Cantina fan, because this is a really fun one to discuss. So in A New Hope, after Leia was captured by Darth Vader, she's tortured. She was imprisoned in cell 2187. And eventually she's rescued by our homies Han, Luke, and Chewbacca. Following the destruction of Alderaan, and she was scheduled to be executed, but Luke, Han, Chewbacca, they rescue our lovable princess. And like many things in Star Wars, the number 2187 has more meaning than you might actually think. It was really fun to dive into this question because this Easter egg, we'll say, and reference is a little bit more special and has more meaning than even I was aware of before I was researching this, which I think is really cool. So Cell 2187 is a reference to a short film called 2187. And it was a short film created in 1963, directed by Arthur Lipset, that depicted a machine-dominated society. And 2187 wound up having apparently a very profound influence on George Lucas and on Walter Murch, an editor and designer with whom Lucas worked with. George Lucas even described the short film as the kind of movie he wanted to make. So 2187 wound up being this big inspiration for George Lucas in his feature film directorial debut, THX 1138. Now, I watched THX 1138 years ago, and it's all right. I love dystopian stories, like dystopian novels, shows that take place in dystopian worlds, or movies that take place in dystopian worlds. Like, those are my jams. THX 1138, it's all right. It's not my world's favorite film, but it's not bad, and it's cool to know that, you know, it's a George Lucas film. I will say he definitely created a unique world with THX 1138. So if you haven't seen it before, I'm sure you could probably watch it on YouTube. You'd probably find it for free somewhere. I'd say give it a watch, especially if you're a fan of sci-fi and dystopian stories, because that short film 2187 influenced George Lucas in the making of his directorial debut, THX 1138. Now, I did skim through 2187, the short film. It's an abstract film. It's the essentially, I believe the film was made when Lipset was in art school or film school. So it's really not my cup of tea. I'm not the biggest abstract film fan. There are definitely some interesting moments, some cool moments. There's some cool quotes in it. So if you are a fan of like art films or abstract films, I would say give it a watch. It's not very long. I think it was like 15 minutes, maybe 20 max, but I'm pretty sure it was only like 12 to 15 minutes long. It's not very long. With that said, there's a quote in the film that is really cool, and it is said to have inspired the concept of the Force, at least to some degree, as Lucas also drew inspiration for the Force from the powers of the Bene Gesserit in Frank Herbert's Dune, which I love. Dune is such a great movie. The Denis Villeneuve version of Dune. I talked about this in my first Q&A that that film is incredible, and the first Dune novel is really cool. And George Lucas took a lot of inspiration for sure from Dune. So there is definitely parallels from the powers that the Bene Gesserit have in Frank Herbert's Dune and what we see in the Force and those that can wield it. But there is a quote in the short film 2187 that apparently inspired George Lucas when crafting the concept of the Force, which I do think is really cool. The statement was made by Roman Kreuter. I hope I'm pronouncing that individual's name properly. And it's essentially discussing nature and the connection between living things, which I think is really cool because that's something that we hear a bunch throughout Star Wars, especially in the original trilogy, in the Clone Wars, in Star Wars comics, novels. So I think that's really cool that that quote was something that George Lucas was able to draw inspiration from when creating something like the Force. So that's pretty dope. Additionally, Finn from the sequel trilogy, his stormtrooper designation in The Force Awakens is FN 2187, and that's a reference by J.J. Abrams to Leia's cell number in A New Hope, which I think is cool. It's dope that I'm not the biggest J.J. Abrams fan, but I do think it's cool that he did try to pay homage to A New Hope and to George Lucas in The Force Awakens. So yeah, so Princess Leia's cell number definitely has some cool meaning that, like I said, some of this stuff I wasn't aware of. So it was interesting to read about this stuff, to watch that abstract film, even though it wasn't my cup of tea, still kind of interesting to learn about. So moving on to our next question. E asks, could Anakin become more powerful than the ones, or did he only defeat the son and the daughter because he was on Mortis? Love this question. This is a really cool question. This was another fun question that I really enjoyed getting. I love the Clone Wars. The arc that this question is referencing is from a season 3 arc in the Clone Wars animated series. It's a 3-episode arc, and it's a really cool arc within Clone Wars. It's kind of trippy. It's one of those arcs where there's a lot of really cool moments in those 3 episodes, and the characters, the son, the father, the daughter, which we're going to talk about in a moment, they're really cool. So if you've never watched it before, I would totally recommend it. It's, I believe, episode 15, 16, and 17 in season 3 of the Clone Wars. So definitely check it out if you haven't watched it before. Now, before I answer this question, I do want to give some frame of reference to what happens during this arc, and to also provide some information on Mortis itself, which is going to help in answering this question. I think it's a good idea to give a frame of reference for Mortis, the Mortis gods, what's the deal with that location, because that's going to help when answering this question. So at the start of this arc, essentially what happens is the Jedi Order receives a transmission. They receive a strange transmission, which includes a 2,000-year-old outdated Jedi distress code. So the Jedi just randomly get this distress code, and not only is it weird, but it has an outdated Jedi distress code. To make things even more weird, the distress code came from the Krelinthium system, which is in wild space. So wild space is different from the unknown regions. The unknown regions there's a good amount of the unknown regions that has been plotted and has been mapped out. Wild space is completely not mapped. No one knows what the hell is beyond wild space. So the Jedi get this weird outdated old Jedi distress code that's transmitted to them. And then on top of that, it's sent from wild space. So what the hell? So the Jedi Order sends Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka to go and investigate. And they're supposed to rendezvous with a star cruiser commanded by Captain Rex. And even once they get to the exact coordinates from where the transmission came from, or excuse me, the exact coordinates where Rex and the Star Destroyer are, they are not able to essentially perceive each other. Like, I guess that's the best way to describe it. Like, both Rex and our homies Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin are in the exact same location. They cannot see each other. They could speak to each other, but they can't see each other. And then suddenly this like irresistible force pulls the Jedi shuttle into this gigantic crystal-shaped structure. And the Jedi wind up being knocked out. So Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, they wound up getting knocked out. And then they wake up on this mysterious planet of Mortis, which was this ethereal realm within the Force. So really cool. Sonia, welcome to the chat. Glad you're joining us. We're talking about Mortis, Anakin, and the Mortis gods from the Clone Wars. Now, Mortis is a really cool place. It was believed that Mortis existed outside any star system and potentially the galaxy or even the universe. And some even believe that the origins of the Force came from Mortis. So Mortis, to some extent, is almost like the world between worlds that we saw in Rebels in season 4, where again, kind of outside time and space, but you're able to access it through the Force, where the world between worlds and Mortis differ is the world between worlds allows someone to access different times throughout history, basically. Mortis is just like this weird, almost like planet. It has these dream-like environments. It could not be mapped, and even its landmarks appeared in different locations frequently. Furthermore, entrance to the realm was never voluntary, which I think is so cool. So essentially, Mortis drew in its visitors inexplicably, excuse me, and in doing so, it would manifest itself in different ways. So for some, it manifested itself as a massive monolith floating in space. Other times, individuals walked through a door or landed there without discernible reason. And in the instance of Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, it's this giant, just like crystal-shaped thing floating in the middle of space, which is really cool. And interestingly, time within Mortis had no meaning. What seemed like days or weeks within the realm passed within seconds outside of Mortis, and it was a mysterious quality shared with places such as Octo and Dagobah, which I think is so dope. So Octo is the location where Rey goes to when Luke is in exile, where Luke is in exile in The Last Jedi and in The Force Awakens. That's the planet that the first Jedi temple, or one of the very first Jedi temples, was located in the, I think it's in the unknown regions. Can't remember specifically offhand. And then Dagobah is the infamous planet that we see Yoda was living in exile on in The Empire Strikes Back and after Revenge of the Sith, which I think is super dope. Both planets are very strong in the Force. So it's awesome that those two planets could potentially have some similar qualities to them as Mortis. So essentially, in a nutshell, Mortis is wild as hell. It's extremely strong with the Force, and unlike anywhere else and unlike anywhere else in the galaxy. Now, here's the daughter-son or we'll go from left to right. The son, the father, the daughter. Let me make this bad boy a little larger. And once Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin get to Mortis, they wind up speaking with these three individuals. They meet these three individuals. So, as I mentioned, we got the son over here on the left. Zoomed out. Son over here on the left, father in the middle, and the daughter here on the right. And these three individuals, they were highly force-sensitive beings who were believed to be godlike, and they're referred to as the Force wielders, the Ones, and the Mortis gods. These beings had to withdraw from the temporal realm of the galaxy. So essentially, they had to withdraw from the galaxy because their power, they were so strong, their power threatened to disrupt the galaxy. The father acted as a balance between the daughter, who embodied the light side of the Force, and the son, who embodied the dark side of the Force. The siblings were essentially immortal so long as the father remained alive. So the father would essentially die, but the son and the daughter could remain immortal so long as there was a father to be able to maintain balance between the light side and the dark side. So the father was essentially, time was running out for our boy. Father time was coming for the father, essentially. And he drew Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka to Mortis after he realized that Anakin was the prophesized chosen one and could potentially maintain balance of in the Force between the son and the daughter once he died. So the father is like, yo, I'm ready to peace out. I need someone to replace me so that the light side and the dark side are kept in check. I need someone extremely strong in the Force. He learns about Anakin, this prophesized chosen one, this being that was prophesized as being able to bring balance to the light and the dark. And the father draws Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin to Mortis, hoping to sway Anakin to replace him once the father dies. Yo, Bull Run, what's up? Welcome to the chat. We're talking about the Mortis arc from the Clone Wars, the Mortis gods, and whether Anakin could potentially be more powerful. So once Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are on Mortis, as a test to prove Anakin could be a sufficient replacement, the son and the daughter, they shapeshift, they wind up kidnapping Ahsoka, and then the father forces Anakin to choose. One of them is going to die. Who's it going to be? And I love this scene because in this scene, the planet Mortis it's all bright, it's daytime, and then Anakin, calling upon the Force, is using his Force powers to try to save Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and it just changes to nighttime, and you see it's kind of like this yin-yang that you'll see here, and I love that. And essentially what winds up happening is Anakin is then able to use the planet's Force amplifying properties to force the son and the daughter to return to their human forms, because you'll see here they could shapeshift into these different animals. So the son, or the daughter over here, she shapeshifts into, I think this is a griffin. Is that what a griffin is? An eagle, kind of like an eagle animal, and then the son is this sort of like bat. So Anakin uses the Force, forces them to change back into their human-like appearances, and then forces them to release Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. So proving that our bro is super strong in the Force, and he could keep these two in check and can keep, hopefully, the Force in balance. So now to answer E's question, could Anakin become more powerful than the Ones, or did he only defeat the son and the daughter because he was on Mortis? I think the answer to this question is Anakin was only able to defeat the son and the daughter because of Mortis's force amplifying properties. Thank you, Bull Run. So yes, a griffin is head of an eagle and the body of a lion. Thank you. I knew it was something like that. I kept thinking of Gryffindor from Harry Potter. But yes, head of an eagle, body of a lion. I think there might even be some other, like, versions of a griffin that may have some other animal components to me. But we're getting off topic here. It's essentially, right? So to go back to my answer to this question, Anakin was really only able to defeat these two, the son and the daughter, because of Mortis's force amplifying properties. Thinking about what I mentioned earlier, the father, son, and the daughter, they were once a part of the galaxy, but because of their strength in the force and their powers, they had to leave the known galaxy in the temporal realm of the galaxy and go to this wild world of Mortis so that they just did not disrupt the galaxy. As powerful as Anakin is, our homeboy is not that powerful, even at the height of his powers, right? When he's Darth Vader, yeah, he's having his powers in the Force are really disrupting the galaxy, but not in the way that it's implied that the son, the daughter, and the father do. So the son and the daughter, the son, I'm trying to remember from the arc, I think he wanted Anakin to essentially work with him so that they could control the galaxy. And those two together would just run shit. But yeah, even though Anakin is super strong in the Force, and even at the height of his, let's say, Jedi powers, and then later Darth Vader, when he's a Sith, I don't think his powers in the Force would reach that kind of level that he would be able to completely disrupt the galaxy. So Bull Run asks, but would I say the Force is even more powerful? What do you mean by that? You think the Force is more powerful than what? The Mortis gods themselves, Anakin, Mortis? I'm not exactly sure what you're thinking the Force might be more powerful. I mean, the Force essentially, I don't want to say is the most powerful thing in this galaxy, but right, I mean, it kind of is. It connects all life, but it's so okay. So you're just making a statement rather than a question. Gotcha. So yeah, as strong as Anakin is, I don't think our boy would be strong enough, or stronger, I should say, than the son and the daughter. But this is a really cool question, really fun one. Now, one of the things that I love, and I should have grabbed a screenshot of it, is in this arc, there's a moment in the final episode of the arc, so episode 17, where the son is trying to convince Anakin to join him. He wants to leave Mortis. He wants to venture out into the known galaxy, and he's trying to convince Anakin to basically work alongside him. He shows Anakin a Force vision of him becoming Darth Vader and all the terrible things that he's going to do. It is such a dope moment. It's one of those moments where it just completely makes me love and appreciate the Clone Wars. I know sometimes people try to dunk on the Clone Wars, calling it a kid's show. And it has its moments, but man, it has moments in it that are absolutely incredible. And that's one of those moments. Seeing Anakin see that vision of him becoming Darth Vader and the things that he'll do is just so freaking awesome. It's also sad to know that at one point he knew he was going to become Darth Vader, but I believe the son wipes his memory of it. I'm trying to remember exactly what happens. It's been a little bit since I've watched that episode, but yeah, great arc. Totally would recommend it. Definitely check it out if you have not. All right, so on to our next question. Why did Anakin and Luke only wear one glove? There's an in-universe reason that I'm going to give an answer to, and then there's going to be an answer that's more symbolic and metaphorical. So, in terms of an in-universe explanation, Anakin and Luke both wear one leather glove to cover their cybernetic hands. So Anakin, he can be seen wearing a leather glove over his cybernetic hand throughout the Clone Wars and in Revenge of the Sith. He lost it in his duel in Attack of the Clones with Count Dooku. So Dooku chops off his hand during their duel. And Ahsoka, or not Ahsoka, excuse me, Luke, his glove covers his cybernetics after Darth Vader chopped it off during their duel in Empire Strikes Back. In both instances, the addition of cybernetics to the character's body was to symbolize the characters descending closer and closer to the dark side, right? So the addition of cybernetics, that idea of becoming more machine than man, is supposed to symbolize essentially someone coming closer to the dark side. That's why you see a lot of Sith having like transpirators or cybernetics or kind of like crazy stuff going on with their bodies, because usually it's to help show that not only does it look cool but and menacing, but it's to show that they're descending closer and closer to the dark side. So for Anakin, that transformation becomes all consuming, right? He falls to the dark side, he transforms into Darth Vader. He's not yet this version of Darth Vader that we see right here standing next to Sidious, right? He's, no cybernetics other than his hand. He goes and duels. Obi-Wan loses, and then he's got to become the Darth Vader that we know from the original trilogy, right? So he's more machine than man, and he's now consumed essentially by the dark side, and his cybernetics are supposed to symbolize him being consumed by the dark side. For Luke, the addition of a cybernetic hand is supposed to mirror what happened to Anakin. So where Anakin allowed himself to be consumed by the dark side and become a malevolent machine of Darth Sidious and the Empire, Luke was not swayed by Sidious's offer to kill his father and become the Emperor's new apprentice. So the inclusion of both characters having lost a hand and needing a cybernetic replacement is supposed to help audiences see the similarities in both Anakin and Luke's story, but also to help us see the differences between those two characters, right? I don't think it's a coincidence that we see Luke wearing where's that image? So we see him wearing a glove on his cybernetic hand in The Last Jedi, as well as in The Rise of Skywalker. But we don't see him wearing it in The Force Awakens. And my thought was, in The Force Awakens, that was to show how he was cut off from the Force, right? He's put himself in exile. He shut himself off from the Force. So my thought is that Luke not having a glove in the end of The Force Awakens, the beginning of The Last Jedi, it's to show that he's cut himself off from the Force. But we do see him later on in The Last Jedi and in The Rise of Skywalker, where he is wearing that glove. And my thought is that, it's to symbolize him kind of returning to the Force. But yeah, it's absolutely, as I said, in universe, it's to show that they've got cybernetic hands at this point, but for the audience, essentially, and for the meaning behind it, it's supposed to symbolize that these two characters are teetering towards the dark side. Anakin is consumed by the dark side, thus becoming Darth Vader in this machine. And then Luke, he's able to not be swayed to the dark side, thus not becoming a frickin' machine. All right, now on to our last question. This question might have been the question I had the most fun with, because when I initially got this question, I was like, oh, this is super easy. But then I started thinking about it more and more. I'm like, bro, did this question just reframe how I look at Return of the Jedi and one of my favorite moments in Star Wars? I think it did. So Antoine Hartman asks, did Darth Vader stop Luke from killing the Emperor? As I mentioned, I read this question. My first thought was, bro, Darth Vader stopped Luke from killing Sidious, right? We see him block Luke's strike with a lightsaber as Luke's trying to kill the Emperor. But the more I thought about it, I was like, dog, I don't know if that's the case. I think it was Anakin, not Darth Vader, who stopped Luke from killing the Emperor. So Luke's plan in Return of the Jedi, right? He turns himself into Darth Vader. He wants to be taken to the Emperor. So his plan is, I'm going to turn myself into Vader. Vader's going to take me to the throne room on the second Death Star. And my plan is I'm going to try to kill the Emperor. Luke straight up tells Sidious both of them are soon going to be dead. So Luke's thought was, I'm going to have to kill us all. We're all going to wind up dead. Sacrificing himself, killing these two so that the galaxy can essentially no longer have to be under the Imperial yoke. And now that I say that, obviously he wanted to kill the Emperor. And he does tell the Emperor, hey, you and I are both going to be dead. Was his intention for Vader to die, or in his mind, Anakin to die? I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm going to probably have to mull that over and think about it more. But nevertheless, Luke's thought is, I'm dying, Emperor's dying. We gotta go out, guns a-blazing, essentially. So at this point, we then see Luke, he snatches his lightsaber uses the Force to snatch his lightsaber from Sidious, and then goes to kill the Emperor. And again, Vader blocks his strike, and then the two will have an awesome duel. And even though Vader has not completely returned to the light side and become Anakin again, he's nearly returned to the light side, so he's almost there. And then we see Luke, he gets consumed by the dark side. He starts whooping Vader's ass. And he sees that cybernetic hand. So going back to what we mentioned to earlier, right? That the cybernetics are supposed to be a symbolism of someone being consumed by the dark side. Luke understands, I'm being consumed by the dark side right now. And he looks at his hand and realizes, bro, this is not good. Reminding him of Anakin's fall and that he doesn't need to become his father. And he utters one of my absolute favorite lines in all of Star Wars. I am a Jedi like my father before me, when Sidious is telling him, hey, finish off Vader, you can become my apprentice. And Luke's like, brah, nah, I'm a Jedi just like my father before me. One of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars. I can't even begin to tell you guys how much that scene wrecked me and pumped me up at the same time when I was a little kid. I would straight up cry and jump for joy whenever I watched that scene as a youngling. And then I love that it's Anakin that saves Luke from Sidious, and both father and son have saved one another from the dark side. Just so freaking good. So good. For many, many years, Return of the Jedi was my favorite Star Wars film, probably until like my late teens, early 20s. Return of the Jedi was my jam. It was my favorite Star Wars film, especially because of the Emperor's throne room. I loved the duel between Luke and Vader. I loved how their lightsabers looked. Like, their lightsabers looked so dope, especially Luke's green lightsaber just looked freaking sick. So for a long time, Return of the Jedi was my go-to Star Wars movie. If I was in the mood to watch Star Wars when I was young, usually it was Return of the Jedi I was popping on. And I'm going to date myself here. It was my box set of VHS tapes. I pop in Return of the Jedi. Eventually The Empire Strikes Back overtook Return of the Jedi for my favorite Star Wars movie. But yeah, Return of the Jedi is dope. And I love seeing the moment where Luke tells Sidious, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And I love the fact that Anakin saves Luke from the Emperor, and Luke's able to save him from the dark side. It's just so dope. Oh, such a great movie. It makes me think of, I am not going to spoil it. You have not read Shadows of the Sith. Highly recommend it. To some extent, has something to do with what I'm talking about now. Takes place, I can't remember how many years after Return of the Jedi. Is it 20 years? 10 years? I can't remember. But totally worth reading, and I would highly recommend it. So yeah. Great questions. This was not as long as some of our other Q&As. Didn't get as many questions this week, but that's all right. Definitely happy to answer your Star Wars questions. Talk to you guys. Kind of a bummer. I with Thanksgiving last week here in the US, I've been trying to do these on Monday, but with the holiday here in America, and with us no longer having Andor, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stream this on Wednesday. It's kind of a bummer that we don't have Andor anymore. I'm jonesing for more Star Wars, and we should hopefully get that Star Wars itch scratched fairly soon with the Bad Batch. So let me do this. Let's take a look here. Let me catch up with the chat. So Bull Run says, so going back to what I mentioned before about the glove of Luke on Luke's hand. So right, so what I was saying about Luke seeing that glove. So Bull Run says, I wouldn't say it's the glove, more so of him seeing himself, saw his anger, and realizes he was fallen to the dark side. Yeah, so I mean, essentially that's what the purpose of that glove is, right? To remind him, hey, this is, look at what happened to my father. Look what he became. He allowed the dark side to consume him and to turn him into this Sith Lord. I don't want to fall down that same path. I am a Jedi like my father before me. Love it. What about Willow? Bull Run asks. Oh, bro, I love Willow. Willow was totally my jam when I was younger. Like a month or two ago, I made Danny Girl watch that with me. She'd never watched it before, so I'm like, oh, we got to watch it. And I hadn't seen it probably in like 2 decades. I haven't watched it probably since I was a teenager. It was one of those movies that if it was on TV, I would watch it. Or if I was sick and staying home from school and I wanted to watch like a comfort movie, Willow was one of those movies. I was always into fantasy and nerdy stuff when I was a kid, so Willow was 100% my jam when I was younger. I watched it with Dana Girl recently, like I said, last month or two. She really enjoyed it, and it was really fun to go back and watch it as an adult when I haven't seen it probably since I was a teenager, maybe even younger, and see how it's definitely, the graphics aren't the best, and it's wild to me how far fantasy films and stories have come as far as storytelling and the production quality that we now get in these big sci-fi and fantasy, not just movies, but shows. It's dope. Wow, so you had never heard of Willow, Bull Run until about 2 years ago. Yeah, it's a fun movie. I'm super excited for the show. I don't know anything about the show other than the fact that our homeboy, oh my god, what is his name? The actor that has been in a ton of Star Wars films. He was in Willow. I'm totally drawing a blank on the actor's name. But yeah, he's returning. He was in the original film, and that's all I know. I'm assuming he's a wizard and he's training uh the next group of wizards, or I don't know. But I'm so excited to watch it, and I'm down to dive back into that world. So yeah, Warren Davis, thank you very much. Bull Run, which I have a freaking computer right here. I could look it up myself. So yeah, I'm very excited for I'm very excited for Willow, and I'm hoping it's going to be fun. I think it will be, but we'll have to see. So I would like to try to stick to either Mondays or Wednesdays for Q&As. It may wind up being Mondays. Like I said, because of the holiday last week kind of threw a monkey wrench into my weekend. But at the bare minimum, we're going to continue doing these Q&As. Might wind up being anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, just depending upon the question, how many questions I get, how badly I want to nerd out about a topic. But nevertheless, we'll be doing these Q&As each week moving forward, and I like this being an opportunity for you guys to ask me Star Wars stuff. I like to be able to shoot the breeze with folks about Star Wars, so these are super fun. So definitely make sure to keep an eye out for other Q&As when they drop. If you have not, now's a good time to like this video. Let me know down in the comments if there was any boneheaded things I said that you disagree with, or any things that you did agree with. Let me know so we can continue our conversation. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, Mont Bradley, welcome to the chat. Although we're winding things down, but Val Kilmer is freaking great in Willow. My wife and I were literally like in tears laughing the scene where they are rolling down a mountain, becoming a giant snowball. It is absolutely hilarious and dope. I wonder if Val Kilmer will make an appearance in the show. But anyway, yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Willow. Also, are you looking forward to Willow? Because I sure am, and I can't wait to dive into that show. Subscribe to the channel. Keep a lookout for shorts that we drop on the reg. Usually each day dropping a short, so make sure to check those out. And then also doing a stream of me playing Fallen Order, which has been a ton of fun. I have to say, I just started playing. My brother has been trying to get me to play Cyberpunk 2077 since essentially it came out. And I was like, yeah, that game looks cool. It had a lot of negative reviews when it first came out. So I'm like, I don't think I want to buy it. So there's a Cyberpunk show on Netflix that came out recently. I started watching it, and after the first episode, I was like, yo, this is freaking dope. Started watching some more. I'm like, I got to play this game now. Started playing the game like 2 nights ago. It is so much fun. The story is awesome. I could definitely see some glitches in the game still, even though it's been out for like over a year, maybe even 2 years at this point. Still has some glitches, but great game. I was wondering if maybe that would be a game to stream down the line, because apparently there's like 100 hours of gameplay, because there's a ton of missions that folks could do. So that might be another game that down the line I might stream, because so far I'm really, really enjoying it. But for right now, Fallen Order, going to be doing streams of those, of that gameplay, I should say. And as I mentioned, this live Q&A that I'll continue to do. So with that, my friends, I think I'm going to go freaking eat. I'm starting to get hungry. I haven't eaten yet. Stomach's starting to growl. So with that, my friends, may the force be with you and stay nerdy.